At first, I groaned loudly as my phone's alarm went off that Sunday morning, May 11th, automatically assuming it was my work alarm, as you do. But after rolling over and seeing it was 9 a.m., 3 hours later than I usually have to be up and about, I smiled briefly with satisfaction. Nice to have some extra sleep every now and again, even if you're a loner like myself with nothing better to do than to work your tail off. I got up and took a quick shower. Fed myself a basic breakfast of a Reese's sandwich, as I call it, peanut butter and Nutella on bread, pretty self-explanatory, and hopped into my car. That little kid in me pushing me on to go, 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 all the cool stuff. I parked in the parking lot of the deli immediately next to the place, as not to have everyone see I was there, and cautiously making my way over, looking around me like a crappy thief who knew that they were going to get caught. But traffic was sparse this Sunday morning due to church, without a doubt, and I made it up the walkway with no trouble. The sign, as always during the morning and day, was flipped to open. I took a deep breath, unsure of whether to be nervous, giddy, whatever other emotion comes to mind, and opened the door. I expected an insanely loud creak as I opened it, but it was like it had been treated with WD-40 since the day it was put on the hinges. Completely smooth and silent. I stepped in slowly, and what I saw within took me aback. There were no words that even the child part of me could articulate. It looked almost 3 times bigger on the inside than it did on the outside. But that had to be because of all the stuff. Nothing even recognizable, just weird trinkets and baggies galore on every inch of shelving in sight. It was baffling. The smell of the place was also surprisingly pleasant. Like root beer, almost. Wintergreen, maybe? I can't be the only one who's always gotten those mixed up. All of it just made me step in further. So far, Hartsville didn't know what they were missing. They could have gotten Guinness down here to log this place as having the most random bits and baubles. I stood, letting the door close behind me, and just gaze at everything, my mouth agape. When suddenly, a high-pitched and rather chipper voice piped up from a doorway just behind the counter. "Oh my, a customer! Hello, do come in! Hello, do come in!" I looked in the direction of the voice and almost jumped. Now making their way up to the counter to greet me, I saw that they looked odd. Before me, as I stepped up to the counter, was a tall figure. I wasn't sure if it was man or woman yet, but they stood at what had to be, if not 7 foot, at least 6'5", like super, super tall. Along with height, of course, often comes lankiness, and this individual was no exception. Skinny as an ever-loving twig. Skinnier than me, which is saying something. Their outfit only made them stand out more. They wore an entirely too tall top hat that had a flower jutting out from the brim, and a sparkling, and I mean sparkling, red suit with purple flower patterning it all over it. Red suit with purple flowers patterning all over it. Red suit with purple flowers patterning it all over. Keeping them upright was a cane. I couldn't see if the top hat had any sort of decorative bit as the person's hands covered it. "Hi there. Really cool little shop you have here. Looks like you've got everything." I laughed softly, trying not to show that I was thrown off by the person's appearance, suddenly reminding myself that I should probably get their name. "I never seen you around here. What's your name?" I asked suddenly, feeling bad that I most definitely cut off whatever my seller was going to respond with in terms of my first statement, but it didn't seem to bother him. "No, how forgetful of me. You may call me Maury, short for Moriarty," he said, giving a wink. He reached out for a handshake. "I'm Anthony. Pleasure to meet you, Maury," I said warmly, shaking his lanky and bony hand, now starting to feel more comfortable in Maury's presence. Sure, he looked a bit off, but he didn't act strange from what I could see, just being cordial like anyone else. Pleasure's all mine, my friend. Now, what brings you to the compendium, eh? He asked cheerfully. A curiosity more than anything. Your place has just been sitting here and no one else has given it the light of day, so I figured why not? They'd appreciate the customer, I said, shrugging. Maury smiled warmly. Well, I appreciate the gesture greatly. I took yet another look around. So, what exactly is it that you sell? I asked. Maury stood in silent thought for a moment. You know, in all my years with the compendium, that's something I've even asked myself. Experiences, maybe? Best way I can describe it, he said, giving a curt little chuckle as he shrugged before turning to a shelf behind him, reaching for something. I watched in silence. Here, I guess, let me give you a sample of sorts, he said, bringing down and placing a spherical object on the counter. I stepped closer and examined it. I know you all hate my pop culture analogies, but honestly, nerdy geek is my most fluent language, so please bear with me. Harry Potter Quidditch. Not the golden snitch, but those other balls they use, the brown ones with the couple circular indents in it. It looked just like that. Only difference being the indents seemed to have what looked like padlocks or some kind of combination lock thing, I guess. I shouldn't even try. I picked up the ball in my hands, examining it closer. Every indent had that strange combination lock type thing. I began to fiddle with it when Maury piped up. One moment, I have the answer to that puzzle here somewhere, he said, a sudden puzzle look on his face as he made a beeline for that back room. After a couple minutes, he raced back out with a post-it note in his hand. There we are. Now, if this happens to cause you any issues, don't hesitate to call me, he said happily. Why would it have issues? I asked, confused. Well, if the little combo doohickeys happen to jam up and you can't solve it, he said, raising his arms as if it was obvious. To be fair, it was. Right, I chuckled softly, now looking at the post-it. Along with 3 numbers were 3 symbols. 2 combinations? Well, thanks, Maury. I appreciate the freebie, I said, my spirits lifting back to the childlike curiosity and excitement as I looked at Maury. Of course, never hesitate to just visit either. I'm sure you understand it's awful lonely when everyone just won't try to meet you, he said, a slight somber look coming onto his face. Despite how much his height intimidated me, I turned away from the door and walked up to him, putting a reassuring hand on his arm. I couldn't put it on his shoulder. I'll have to take you up on that. How about tomorrow? I asked cheerfully. His face lit up. That'd be fantastic. Oh, thank you, friend, he said. I could feel the genuine thankfulness in his voice. I patted him once more and made my way out. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Maury, I said, giving him a wave. Till tomorrow. Ta-ta. The door closed behind me. Wow, I thought. What was so bad about this place? Or the owner? Tons of interesting things, puzzles, Maury said, to be discovered, maybe solved. I looked over at the sphere in the passenger seat after getting back in, and then pulling out the post-it again. I was going to solve this little puzzle ball ASAP. I got in and immediately put my pajamas back on before sitting down in my recliner, once again holding the puzzle. I grabbed the post-it note from the table beside me and put it on the arm of my chair, holding the sphere and turning one of the indents toward me. Maury had gone so far as to give the littlest of intricacies of the puzzle ball, showing which number went on which indent. Same with the symbols. Okay, indent 1, 75, I mumbled, cracking the numbers till the pointer landed on 75. Indent 2 was 89, and indent 3 was 99. Click. The ball's indents opened, revealing the other stage of the lock. But this was nothing like a padlock. I stared at the symbols. It's runes. I only know what runes are because I love researching Viking history, but besides the point, I took another look at the note. Trace the shapes of the runes with your fingers. Gently. Gently, huh? Okay, Maury. Whatever you say. I traced my index fingers along the shapes of the runes gently, as instructed, and shortly after, pop. It opened with a sound like an empty cylinder container being popped open. And then it opened from the halfway point. I watched in hypnotized amazement as the top half lifted itself as if by hydraulics, little bits of steam puffing out from all sides. Inside was a glowing purple flower, like one of the flowers on Maury's suit. Its aroma was that of strong lavender. It almost put me to sleep right then and there had I not quickly closed it again out of panic. What the heck was that? I asked to no one in particular. I looked around. Okay, I guess try it again. Actually see what happens? Hesitantly, I let the top half begin to rise again, now just watching it and holding my breath so the smell wouldn't get to me so much. But it was no use. Within seconds, I fell forward as I slipped into a deep slumber, right onto my thankfully carpeted floor. The next thing I remember, I wake up on my floor again, surprisingly rejuvenated and with memories of incredibly vivid and bizarre dreams, like they just happened before my eyes, completely real. I'll summarize it here. At first, it seemed like I woke up in my house, like the flower had simply knocked me out cold. I sat up and looked around, rightfully confused. But then my house began to warp and melt into this insane array of colors and incomprehensible shapes. All I could do was stand and just stare, just like earlier that day in the waking world. But then the color vanished. The shapes and swirls of what used to be said color remained, but it began to warp into a grin, which then spoke in a chillingly raspy but low voice. You've no idea the nightmare you have just stepped into. The voice broke into a deafening cackle just before I bolted awake. What the heck was that? I yelled to myself. What the heck had Maury already given me? What was this thing, this puzzle? After composing myself a moment, I noticed the ball. Now right back to how I had it when Maury gave it to me. Come back if there's something wrong indeed, I muttered to myself, partially glad that I was seeing Maury the next day. Or today, the 12th. I'm writing this a few hours before going to visit with him. Hopefully, I'll have some answers when I come back. Thanks so much for listening, guys. A quick shout out to my patrons. Kevin Kess, Sabiel Eclipse, 055555, Cormac Wells, Amara, Matthew Steiner, Cupcake Hips, Alonzo, Mr. Sankofa, Michael Milburn, Kozak, Icy Narrates, Jesse Hartley, Eric Cifuentes, Andreas Anderson London, Lawrence Wallen, Geek Sanctuary, Melissa Perez, and this guy. That is someone's actual username. I love that. Thanks again so much for watching, guys. If there's anything you would like me to pray for, I would love to know how I can be praying for you. I hope you have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video.